Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bendel.
Here.
Mrs. Hoy is not here yet. Mrs. Miller.
Here.
Dr. Sabo.
Here.
Dr. Schlepper.
Here.
Would you please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I move to approve the minutes from our 4/17/24 meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley?
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Miller.
Yes.
Dr. Sabo.
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Great. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Schlepper, who's going to introduce our student showcase. And I just want to say that I'm so happy that this is a new tradition we have, honoring our seniors at this May meeting. So thank you all for coming, and take it away.
All right. I'm going to keep it relatively brief. We have 5 students that we're featuring tonight in a number of different capacities. We have Maggie Kohler for Mondays with Maggie, which is an incredibly positive and well-loved programming that we do. Mila Gresh is going to be presenting her senior project, and as a note, she was also the winner last year, which was really incredible. Kelsey Long and Lily DuBarry for their senior projects as well, and then Isabel Nerpauni for the Art Show Board Award tonight. So we are pleased to have all of you here with us, and I'll turn it over to Amanda Rossi, our principal.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited this evening to present our seniors. Of the 140 that are graduating, or 141 that are graduating on Sunday, these are just 5 of those special children. Tonight I wanted to highlight a feature that we have had in place, and that is our Mondays with Maggie, and that's with Maggie Kaler. So Maggie, can you come and stand up here with me? Okay, great. All right, great. So basically, I wanted to feature essentially how this has come about, right? Maggie has been with us at the high school since 9th grade, and she attended Chagrin Falls Middle School as well. And while she was in middle school in 8th grade, she joined the newspaper club, and that is where Mrs. Jameson and Maggie collaborated, and she wanted to do video interviews, and that's kind of where Mondays with Maggie was born. She continued to work with Mrs. Jameson, and that was essentially through the pandemic when she was in the 8th grade. And then they brought it back this year after one of our educational aides, Mrs. Sluzar, suggested another season of Mondays with Maggie. And so in her senior year, she kind of picked it back up, and then we've had multiple episodes since then. So if you'll see where it started on the screen behind you, she started with interviewing Mr. Bachowski, who is the choir teacher here at both the Chagrin Falls High School and Chagrin Falls Middle School. And then you can see she's in her cheerleading outfit from 8th grade, and that's pretty much where it started. And those interviews were held in person as her role within the newspaper in 8th grade. And then once we were in the COVID-19 shutdown, they adapted to digital interviews. And having watched them myself, everyone was looking for kind of joy and happiness and things to bring, a smile to their face during that time. And so every Monday I looked forward to whatever interview Maggie and her special guest of the week was going to be. And so you can see that she was connecting with our faculty and with students digitally. That same year in 2020, the Chagrin Valley Times wrote an article about Maggie and her work, her reporting work, and the video segments that she was doing. And so this was the feature of that article. So again, drew a lot of attention at that time. And there's a lot of work that goes into this, right? Maggie selects the kind of feature of the week. She prepares the questions. She has them on cards, and I think every person that's had the opportunity, myself included, to be interviewed by her feels incredibly honored by that selection. Her questions are very thoughtful, and it really gets you thinking about, just life in general and things that you probably don't get asked very often by students, in your role or in your capacity. So she's done an incredible job. And then we started season 2. So you'll see she's featured our district leaders. Dr. Pinzarski, she also had fellow students, and this is our speech language pathologist, so our staff members. And then all of Maggie's seasons, all of her episodes are featured on YouTube as well. So this is a place where even after she graduates, if I need a little dose of Maggie, I can always go back to her YouTube page and watch some of these interviews over and over again. This season alone, she's had 1,874 views on her videos, which are pretty incredible. I don't think I've had that many likes or tweets in my entire 10 years as principal. So she's pretty popular and famous. And the hardest part is going to be saying goodbye. So we are incredibly proud of Maggie and her commitment and dedication to this project. Like I said, it takes a lot of work for her. Over the years, I've had the pleasure of watching Maggie grow and thrive. Being the high school assistant principal and now the principal, I spend a lot of time even, since we're a shared campus, knowing the middle school students. So I can say with confidence that our students and staff and community are going to miss you, myself more probably than anyone else. And then Ms. Lauer had shared that Maggie brings joy to her senior class through her positive attitude. She's always adorned with a warm smile. Her cheerful demeanor creates a welcoming atmosphere that uplifts any environment she is in. Whether in the classroom or during extracurricular activities, Maggie's radiant spirit is a constant source of happiness for her peers and contributes to the overall positive vibe within the senior class. So we're very proud of Maggie, and we're very lucky to have had her in this incredible project that she brought to us. So congratulations, Maggie. You're welcome. I did ask Maggie who her favorite interview was, and you said?
John Catney.
John Catney, which is a fellow senior and is actually our Rotary Student of the Month this month. I thought she was going to pick me, and I said there was no pressure that she didn't, but John's a great guy, so I can understand why she picked him. So.
Thank you so much, Maggie. I want you to know how much I enjoy your videos and how great it is to meet the people myself who you got to interview. I feel like there's so many people who I wouldn't have otherwise, like John Catney, met if I hadn't gotten to meet them through your eyes. So thank you. It's just been a great way to expand for so many people who can watch our community, and it's just a great asset. So thank you. And I hope you keep doing it in the future because we really love them. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I am honored to present tonight our senior projects and our seniors who are here to represent everybody who has completed a senior project this year. Our seniors have spent last week and the beginning of this week on site at a variety of locations, including places such as university hospitals, federal court, the Chagrin Documentary Film Festival, Apex Dermatology, to name a few, just a few. Students either arranged for an internship experience or a creative experience. Tonight, you'll get to hear one of each. Mila Gresh interned with Hannah Bates at the Valley Art Center. We were lucky enough to have Hannah Bates at Chagrin Falls High School at the start of the year as a long-term substitute for one of our art teachers. And Hannah provided Mila with an experience at the Valley Art Center as well as her own private studio. So you'll get to hear more about that. Lily Dewberry and Kelsey Long created their own experience by partnering with Mrs. Carol Yusei in creating a community garden in River Run Park. And together they navigated real-world experiences with local government, fundraising, planning, and execution of building something from scratch. Their mentor, Mrs. Yusei, also has ties to our district as a parent of Nick Yusei from the class of 2004 and grandparents of 3 current students, Sophie, Izzy, and Graham Igo. She and her husband together helped start the lacrosse program here at Sugar Falls several years ago as well. Tomorrow, our students will present their projects during a showcase from 10 to noon to several guest evaluators from the membership of the Chagrin Valley Chamber of Commerce, as well as their faculty advisor. This is kind of going in and out. Can you hear me? Okay. Mila, we would love to start with you, and I can help bring that up here, and we'd love to hear all about your experience. Yeah, thank you.
Please use the microphone.
All right. For my senior project, I chose to shadow Hannah Bates, who is the education manager at the Valley Arts Center, as well as an artist who runs her own studio and gallery space, Vessel City. I chose Hannah because she's an artist who has made a living out of creating her own art, which is what I want to do. Art has always been a huge passion of mine, and being able to create art and sell that and make a living off of what I create has always been a dream of mine. So shadowing Hannah really gave me insight into that career path. So we started off at the Valley Arts Center, and I learned a lot about being an emerging artist and really how to get yourself out there as an emerging artist. Right there's a QR code to a video talk all about being an emerging artist, and it's really about putting yourself out there, applying to shows, and even if you don't get into the show, showing up anyway, introducing yourself to people, making connections in the art world. That's really what an artist is being about, is making connections and putting yourself out there. That's how you get your work out there. That's how people know your name and know your work. And I even counted votes for the current emerging artist show. So people went in and they voted on their favorite pieces, and yeah, so I helped count votes for that. And then, so Art by the Falls, which you probably all know, I also helped create some whiteboard kind of coloring pages for the children's table. So that was really fun. And I learned a little bit about what Hannah does at the Art Center. So, organizing classes and workshops and kind of selecting those, making posters and advertisements for those workshops, and then, picking pieces and organizing community installations. Later in the week, I went to her studio and gallery, Vessel City. There were so many amazing artists that have spaces here, and there was a really amazing show going on at the time. So I got to meet a lot of the artists that have a studio here, kind of learn about the art that they create, how they create that, and then how they make a profit from their art, and how they sell that, and how they turn it into, a job, and how they sell their work. One of the artists, Eli, who I spent about a whole day with, they make jewelry, and they kind of talked about the balance of, making jewelry and keeping that artist voice while also kind of mass producing a product to sell, and how sometimes it can be a hard balance with, staying creative and staying true to your artistic self, while also, selling a product so much. That was really interesting to learn. I also learned about kind of the planning process and submitting your work to get into shows. So Hannah taught me a little bit about that. And then our big project in the middle was casting metal. So one of the main mediums that Hannah works in is she casts stuff. So out of plaster, bronze, cement, silver. So she taught me all about the process of how she makes her art. I am mainly a 2D artist, but jewelry is a big interest of mine. So it was really cool to kind of branch out and learn something new, because casting is not offered at Sugar Falls High School, so it was really interesting to learn this. So I casted a maple seed, and we did this so we used sand to cast it, so we put it in something called a flask, and we cast both sides, and you have to dig it out a little bit to, make it so the metal can be poured all the way through. We melted down a lot of silver, and then we cast it. So I actually have a little maple leaf silver pendant now, so that was really cool to learn. I learned a lot about being an artist, making a living off of your art, and kind of how to balance all that.
So what are your plans next year for art? Are you going to study art at school, or?
Next year I will be attending Savannah College of Art and Design, and studying art.
That's fantastic. And Mila was last year's winner of the board art award. We pick one piece every year, and she was unable to come because you were running. She's also a great runner, and she was at states or sectional, some big meet. But we're glad you were here this year, and this is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so absolutely none of this would have been possible without our awesome mentor, Miss Yusei. She's an occupational therapist who uses like plants to as a form of therapy, and currently she volunteers at St. Jude to help plant like plants. She's also an ICU nurse, so she helps like with those newborn babies, and she's just a great, and absolutely none of this would have been possible without her.
So I want to give just a little bit of background on the name of our garden. So it's called Kindred Spirits Garden. So if you're familiar with the show or the book Anne of Green Gables, or Anne with an E, this is where we got our name from. So Anne and her best friend call each other kindred spirits. So we thought that this would be perfect because we are two best friends who created something within the community, and we absolutely love the show. So our original pitch for our idea was a really small 5x4 garden in River Run Park. Right here is where it was going to be located. We originally wanted it to be located over by the dog park. And if you don't know where River Run Park is, it's the park directly next to Chagrin Pet and Garden on your way to Solon. So as you can see, it was supposed to be really, really small. And so when we presented our idea to the Chagrin Falls gardening committee, they actually really loved the idea. So, and then when we were presenting our idea, the head of the Chagrin Falls Service Department was actually there listening to our idea. And so he actually went and completely built our garden for us. And it's not actually 5x4 anymore, it's actually 8x4. So it's much bigger than we anticipated, which is amazing because we got to put so many beautiful plants and herbs within our garden. So we have kind of like timelines. So do you want to, there you go.
Okay, we also, during that meeting, we also had a person working with the newspaper. So we ended up getting a article in the newspaper about like us wanting to beautify this garden. This article in the newspaper also led us to get in contact with the mayor of Chagrin Falls, or I'm not sure, South Russell. And he was there at the build site, and he helped us like sanction off the plot of land we wanted to build at. Also, the small, like our garden right now is built out of the old bridge, Miles Road Bridge. So there's a little bit of history there. I like to think it represents like a new change in a new like growth, since we are going off to college, and this garden is like kind of the symbolism of like what we've come through and like how we've grown throughout these years.
And if you can see the picture is a little bit small, but these are the sizes of the stones. They're actually pretty large. And like you could totally tell that they're curbs on the outside. Like you can tell it was from the bridge. We thought that was super cool. So instead of having huge boulders, they're actually from a construction site. So that was pretty fun.
So one of the big parts of our garden is that, gardening is expensive, and we really needed donations. Originally, we were going to create a GoFundMe and try to get donations through like Facebook and, or Instagram. But we ended up getting in trouble with the department, and they told us to take it down. So we ended up going directly to gardening stores, and really I learned that this is truly the best way to communicate with people is face to face, because our first interaction actually was with a woman named Miss Matejek. She was actually walking her dog, and we were planting or like designing our garden, and she had guessed what we're doing and like heard about it, and went back home, and we ended up going to Sugar and Penton Garden, and she met us outside there and handed us $50 and was like, I really love your idea, like use this money however you want. So that was pretty awesome. And then we talked to the head of the Sugar and Penton Garden, the owner, and he ended up donating about $65 worth of soil, which is huge because this soil was like our most expensive part, especially like how good of the soil it was. It had like a lot of nutrients stuff that would really help these plants grow. We also ended up going to Auburn Point Greenhouse, and she really loved our idea and ended up giving us an entire tray of annuals. And do you want to talk about the kind of plants?
So when we went here, if you're unfamiliar about how big of a flat is, it's pretty large. So we got a really decent amount of annuals to put in our garden for free. She was super nice. I highly recommend. The place is absolutely stunning. And so for the annuals, they were so pretty, so much more colors because they bloom earlier. So instead of having a full garden full of perennials when they just bloom in the fall, we wanted to have color sooner. So the annuals were perfect. And since she donated that, it was like perfect timing. She was super sweet. We were very thankful for what she did. And then kind of a funny story. So for the water hose at the bottom, we're like, okay, so the river, the river is actually right down there. It's kind of a steep hill down to the river. So we were like, it's gonna be hard to try and go back up and back down to get water. So we wanted to make it accessible for people and easy and without getting hurt. So we actually went to the house across the street and asked, hey, so she knocked on their door, walked across the street, knocked on their door. It was like, hey, do you mind if we use your hose, or do you have any water that we can use? We're actually planting a community garden across the street. She was super nice. She allowed it. She said we can use it whenever we want. So we just wanted to include that because she was super sweet. She's right across the street. And so this kind of goes into my next thing with how like water accessibility. So we actually ended up clearing a path down to the river. It took a very long time. We were fighting probably the biggest rose bush I've ever seen in my life, and lots of poison ivy too. We were protecting ourselves, but it was a little scary. So it goes all the way down to the river. We constructed steps out of the dirt, so you can go back up and back down is easy. You can fill it with a bucket. You don't really have actually right here. So we kind of right here, and then the garden is right up here. Sorry, it's kind of small. You can see the river is right there, so it was perfect. And this, like we said, it took a really long time. It took all day, but we're grateful that we have that, so now we don't have to keep knocking on our door to ask her for water.
Yeah. And then finally, for our final day, we decided, hey, let's make this little path more accessible. And so we decided that we're gonna like dig up more of the roots and then to make it not less, so like people won't trip on it. And also we were going to put some like mulch on the like path so it wouldn't like dry down like to the bottom of the hill. We ended up going back to our buddies at the service department. We ended up just like walking in and basically asking for like mulch, and they were super nice about it, and they were like, oh yeah, we have like actually wood chips if that would help. So we ended up just like getting a bucket of wood chips and then spreading it around. So now that just looks really nice instead of just like a dirt path. And then like we came back the next day just like really like refine our really just watered our garden and stuff. And we ended up having a lot more like wood chips than we expected there. And so it turns out he went over there and dumped a bunch of wood chips down there. And finally, since we are going off to college and it's going to be hard to maintain this garden, we are very grateful that the service department volunteered to maintain our garden for us because I guess we didn't scare them away with our wood chip order.
I just want to add one thing. So if you notice in the bottom corner right there, within our garden, we actually have this small sectioned area off where we built a fairy garden. So we thought it would be a really cute idea because our garden, we're kind of going for more of a sensory garden. There's a bunch of plants, super soft. They smell really good. You can eat some of them, such as the herbs that we have in our garden. And there's actually this really cool sound plant. If you shake it, it makes this cool noise. Thank you, Mrs. Yusei. So it's kind of small, I apologize, but it's really cool. So that pink house right there, it was actually an old birdhouse that was infested with ants that we actually never really got rid of the ants. So, so we painted that and kind of reused it and put it in our fairy garden. We have a bunch of like stones that we found at the river, a bunch of moss, and we got these cute little fences from Auburn Point Greenhouse. So I just kind of want to point that out because that's personally that's my favorite part of the garden. So, and this is kind of just a diagram of it. We labeled all the plants, like I said, like a bunch of different colors. So, yeah.
You know, our final product might not be like exactly like how we planned it, but you know, we ended up getting something so much better than we can ever expected just because of this community and how amazing it is and how they all come together when they want to like really do something. So I just thought how amazing that was and just how much I learned from collaborating together in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I just wondered, had either of you gardened before?
Kind of. I didn't have that much experience. My mentor was really great with showing us all the ropes, and now like I can take that experience and garden a lot more.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
I could not be more proud of these seniors and all of their accomplishments. And I think the girls, have so eloquently, everyone really has said that all of the adults that have been kind of present to help them through this, whether it's Miss Jameson with Mondays with Maggie or Miss Bates, with Mila and her project, that was, Miss Bates was hired kind of like a last minute, diamond in the rough, right? We didn't know what we had when she applied, and so to have formed that relationship and to have given her that opportunity, and then Miss Usay and the community just like kind of like the garden, right? Like just watering their passions, right? And like letting it grow. And so we're incredibly proud of them and their accomplishments and incredibly grateful for our community members for all of their support and kind of growing our students and allowing them to thrive. So thank you.
Can I ask? Oh, I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
I usually have a question.
Sorry.
In terms of the community partnerships, if there was a community member that wanted to be a partner and hadn't previously, partnered, is there a database or, like a way, or students that have an idea and don't know where to start? How does
Yes.
that process go about?
As it relates to senior project, we do maintain a database year to year. In my role as assistant principal, previously I'd collected all the names of people who had hosted a student before and who had agreed to host students in years to come. It's part of their evaluation of the project and the work that they do with students, whether or not they want to continue. And now that Jess has taken over in that role, she will continue to maintain that database. So this year, students who maybe weren't sure of what they wanted to do could refer to that list based on, interest area. And then it includes this, person's name, contact information, and email, and kind of like what it is that they did. And then for anyone who, maybe has not participated before but would like to participate, they could always reach out to us, as the high school administration, and then we put them in connection with students as it relates to senior project. If it's just volunteering opportunities or community service, that we handle that slightly a little bit differently. And then Ms. Ross includes all of those opportunities within her student newsletter every week to the kids, and then they log that within our system for logging community service hours. And then once they do that, it kind of sends a verification form to that community member. They say, yes, someone was here, they did Safety Town, or whatever it is, and then we receive that email confirmation. And so that kind of connects those partnerships as well.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Great.
And then,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
And then I think the last student is Isabel Nerpowney. This is the winner for the board award for the arts. Is she here tonight?
She is, and she's.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
Yeah.
great. I am very, very curious about this piece.
Hello, I'm Isabel, and this is one of the pieces I made for my portfolio. This is actually from last year's portfolio. It was in the show this year. But my portfolio last year was a lot about my personal view of the evolution of the imagination as we grow older. And here it's a much more dreary step of how I see it clearly. But it is talking about holding your hopes and your dreams and kind of having to let go of the unrealistic expectations that you have for your future as a child. In a later piece, it gets a little more hopeful as it's saying you don't have to let go of everything you love as you grow up, you just have to work a little harder for it. This specific piece is made with acrylic paint on canvas with charcoal over top of it, white charcoal and black charcoal. The white is mainly used to highlight parts of the face and from the lights that are held in the hands.
That's amazing.
I want to make sure that our 3 YouTube viewers also get a view.
Oh, and also on behalf of the board, we have a award for you if you'd like to come and grab that. Thank you so much. It's really beautiful. I was the board representative at the judging for these, and I walked around for a couple hours at the show, and it almost took my breath away for some reason. I just came around the corner and saw this, and it just really spoke to me in so many ways. So thank you for sharing your work with us. It was really beautiful. Well
It's my
done.
pleasure, thank you.
Sure.
And just to pitch, if you haven't done so, walking through the shared space and seeing all of the posters of all of the AP portfolios from past graduates, it is just stunning what the kids produce and what our art department supports. So if you're in the building and you haven't had a chance and you can walk through there, I highly recommend that you take a few minutes and do it.
Is that one going to be displayed somewhere now?
I don't know, do we display that in the central office?
It's usually displayed somewhere around stands so that
Okay.
it gets more viewing. And then at the end of the year, the student can come and pick up the paintings or the whatever is chosen. So typically that's what we've done in the past.
Wonderful. So people will have a chance to see that as well. So thank you very much. That's it, right? Anything else? That's it? Okay, great. All right, so we would love to have you all stay if you would like to enjoy the rest of our meeting. It's very exciting, but we understand that you have probably many things to do to get ready for graduation on Sunday, so we'll take a little break if you guys want to head home, we understand. Thank you so much for coming. Ashley, we have 3 on here. Do I skip? Let me ask you before they go. Okay, thanks, Amanda. Do we have anybody signed up for public participation?
I have not received anything from anyone in advance.
Nope, okay. So I'm going to move on to the consent agenda. I'm going to make a motion to approve consent items 5.02, 3, 5, 6, and 7. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions? Ashley, can you take the roll?
Mrs. Bendel,
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy,
Yes.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper.
Yes.
Okay, we're on to 6.0, our superintendent recommendations. I make a motion to approve superintendent recommendations 6.02 to 6.19. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Jennifer, you want to walk us through these?
Sure. 6.02 is just a second read on one of our board operational policies. This is the Neola policy. anticipate in June that we'll have some policies to update and finalize. So we'll be following that process. In 603 are our 141 graduates that will be, our commencement will be on Sunday the 19th, right now at 2 o'clock at the stadium, which is very exciting. 604 is a memorandum of understanding with our OPC, that's our classified union. You remember probably at some previous meetings that we were fixing or kind of clarifying some of the ways that we pay. And when we had the monies for COVID and during those times, some of the summer pays and the ways the grant works, sometimes those monies were different based on grants, and now those are gone, and we need to clarify what summer pay would be for our educational aides, and that's what this MOU is really doing, is just clarifying some of that, and this one's for the ESY program during those summer months. 605 might look just a little different. It's not, it's something that you might see more in the future. This is just an adjustment in hours. So sometimes there would be enrollment reasons, or in this case, a teacher request that if they can go from one full-time equivalent, and that's one full-time teaching position, and maybe reduce that some. So this is just a teacher that's requesting to go from one full-time teaching position to a 0.8. And so it's just a little less classes. We have other teachers that are on 0.8 contracts, so that's what that MOU is just finalizing. 6.06 is kind of along those same lines. So every year we go through our enrollment, we look at what's the highest quality educational experience that we need to offer, and we also look at our efficiency and cost and make sure that we're being true to what our students' needs are. And so this is just a recommendation that with our analysis, we anticipate that we will not need 2 part-time positions at the intermediate school, and that we will be reducing 1 full-time position to part-time at the high school. And so the actual resolution would then come at the next meeting. So that's what you're seeing there. And then along those same lines, we also make decisions such as our kindergarten enrollment so far is at 112. So we have to add a kindergarten section. So these are just things that sometimes come up and you might see on future agendas. So that's what 6.06 is doing. 607 is our normal time for the open enrollment. 608 and 609 are tuitions for preschool and kindergarten. Then we start getting into contracts. And remember, it's hiring season. So you'll see more and more contracts as we hire for different positions these next few months, which is the reason that we have 2 board meetings for the next 2 months, because we just want to make sure that we can get those hired. The one thing that we did change that I just want to draw to your attention is that all of the new hires are going to be invited to 1 board meeting. So they will all be invited to the August 7th board meeting. So in the past, we've had them come as they were hired, and it's just too challenging for everyone. So we thought we'd just have one big celebration as we're gonna start school. So as you see these new hires, just know they'll be invited to the August 7th meeting. Moving along, additional hours for training. Those are not new to our agendas. We have some resignations. Classified personnel, there's some additional hours there listed. Again, then you have your classified personnel resignations. And just remember, those are listed separately because our certified would be our teacher contracts or CFEA contracts, and our classified contracts are OPC contracts. We do have 1 resignation for the purpose of retirement. If you want to follow along on 6.16, that's Bruce. He'll be retiring the end of June. So we appreciate his service. 6.17 may look a little different because we've not approved this before, but we've realized that we need support in central office because we're such a high functioning office now. So when we're shorthanded, we are shorthanded. And so we're working to make sure that we can get coverage and training and to fill gaps. We need the support. We had someone step up and say that they were willing to help, and it's quite an amazing person if you read the name, if I can say so from talking with her. So we're happy to have Erin be able to serve on that list for us as a sub. Then there's band camp. That's usual, and then there's 2 pages of community ed. And those are just things that we need to approve to get all of our camps in, and then I think that brings me to Ashley. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them for you.
Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Miller,
Yes.
Dr. Sabo,
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper,
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel.
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy.
Yes.
Okay. Next up, treasurer's recommendations. I'll make a motion to approve treasurer recommendations 7.02 to 7.05. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Great. And Ashley, whenever you're ready.
Okay. Take my little notes here. Okay, am I on? Can you hear me? Okay. I can hear, like, I'm right next to the speaker, so it's a little difficult. Item 7.02 is the monthly financial reports for the month of March. And I'm gonna start here. First item is the general fund summary. You can see that the ending balance at the end of March is 30 million. This is our highest month because we get our taxes in January and February. So you will see that start to go down, and in a few slides here, you'll see kind of that kind of roller coaster of our cash balance that we, it's pretty consistent from year to year. So we know that this is our highest month. So when you see that number, don't get too excited because it is going to start to decline over the next couple of months because we're not really receiving money past that. Okay. I'm doing this in 2 different places here because I can't see that far. Okay, next report is the general fund revenue summary. This is the month-to-month comparison. The orange is the current year. All of those shades of gray are prior years. It looks like we have a lot more revenue in March than in previous years, but if you look at February, you'll notice that February was down, and that was just timing on our taxes. So previous years, we got one of the settlements or advances earlier than this year, so we got a little bit later. Now, that is not to say that our taxes are not up. We know taxes are up. We expected that to happen, and that did happen as we expected. But that graph is a little misleading, especially if you're only looking at March. Okay. This is a fiscal year-to-date view of the revenue, so you can see compared to prior years, overall revenue is up. I am still pulling out that little chunk of advances because it's almost $2 million there that kind of artificially inflates that revenue, so I'm just pointing that out so that if anybody is only looking at this, that they'll see that that's not really revenue, it's just a return of an advance. Okay, moving on to expenditures. Again, this is the month-to-month comparison. Orange is current year. Shades of gray are prior years. Pretty consistent in our expenditures here. We know expenditures overall year to year do continue to go up, and that says January at the top of that. It is not, that's March. If I change it here, does it change it right on there? Is that live? No, it's not. Okay, I will correct that. But anyway, you can see where March is up a little bit from prior years, but not significant. Moving on to the year-to-date view of our expenditures, you can see slowly climbing over the last 4 years. After that large reduction after fiscal 2020, right before, right when we passed that levy and we cut a lot of expenditures out so that we could right-size that millage to an acceptable amount. We did that as a commitment and part of part of our plan moving forward was to cut those expenditures. And we've clearly did that, and expenditures have slowly gone up, which is expected. But if you look and you compare 24 to 2020, which, you know, we're 4 years out, we're almost, you know, we're very close to what we were spending 4 years ago. So considering inflation and all the things that have happened, I'm you know, pretty proud of our district for maintaining that promise. Okay. So this is the cash slide that I was referring to a minute ago. You can see, yes, cash is up, but we will expect it to go down just like it has every other year with all those gray lines. Moving throughout the rest of the fiscal year, cash will continue to go down before June 30th. This is a picture of the self-insurance fund over the last couple of years. That dip there that you see is intentional. That was when we had the premium holiday, and that saved our general fund money as well as our employees' money. But we still have a sufficient balance in that self-insurance fund that's healthy, and that's about where we would want it to be right now. So it's operating as we would hope. This is all funds. So up until now, you were seeing all general fund, and then that last slide was just the self-insurance fund. This is a picture of all of our funds. So you can see at the top there that general fund cash balance, that $30 million, will agree to all the previous slides that show the balance. You would be able to trace the March revenue and the March expenditures to those previous slides. Just on that top line. The rest of this is all of the other funds. I don't know that there's anything in particular to point out on those, other than I like to remind people that all of those grant funds run in the negative, and that's expected, as well as the food service fund. We run that in the negative until the end of the year. We know how much we'll need to transfer. Same with the athletic fund. We make those transfers at the end of the year. So once we know how it operated and what happened throughout the year, then in June, at the last June board meeting, you will approve those transfers. We'll transfer money out of the general fund into those funds to cover those deficits. This is the bank reconciliation for the month of March. Nothing too exciting there, but I do need you to have eyes on it and approve it for me. This is a picture of where all of our money is. The green there is the Star Ohio account, and then the orange is our managed account, so that's the Red Tree account, which is held in US Bank. And then all the other smaller pieces of the pie there are we move money into as we need it. Hold it where we are going to make the most money on it. We'll hold it in there as long as we can. Okay, so financial spotlight. We kind of have had some conversations about what to do with this. And one of the things that we get asked a lot is what we actually do. Because if you came and sat, if you're an accountant, for example, and you came and sat in my office or with my staff's office or with the staff in my office, we're not doing all necessarily the same things that just your typical accountant would do. We do a lot of it, but it's not all just the same as running a business. And that's kind of a perception that's out there sometimes, as people think that running a school is just like running a business. And in a lot of aspects it is, but there are a lot of other things that we have to do that are required of us and are kind of put on us by state regulations and Ohio Revised Code and ODE, or is it now DEW? And then all of these other departments that have all of these reporting requirements. So I thought I would come up with a list of some of just the reports that we do and that we have to submit and kind of deadlines. And then I remember that I have this giant schedule that is put together by the Association of Treasurers and Business Managers throughout the state. So to me, just the fact that this file even exists when I show it to you kind of indicates and is kind of indicative of all of the crazy things that we have to do, and the fact that we can't necessarily just keep our mind on it at all times. A lot of these things we do once a year, a lot of them we do once a month. So we have to keep this list and kind of go through, and it just, I'm just gonna pull it up because it's entertaining. How do I get a link on here, Mike? It's a bit more than clicking. I should have given you a heads up before I rambled on about it. Sorry. It really would have been. I was gonna be so impressed.
There's always like a Wizard of Oz.
Uh-huh.
Screen.
So I'm not gonna make him stand back there and scroll down through it,
you
but
should.
it's organized throughout the year. So it starts in January, and it's just meant as a guide. That we kind of all just kind of use this to remind us. Actually, when I looked at this, I was like, oh, I remember I have to do my financial disclosure today because that was due today. And it's just all of these due dates. Mine, it goes down to line 196. So these are all just additional things to do on top of running all of our departments. So this isn't all finance. Some of this is special education requirements. There are some transportation reports in here that the transportation department creates, and then Jennifer and I just sign off on. We'll review and sign. So it's not all just financial department, but it's just kind of a good picture of like, whoa, we really don't know what they do in that office until you really look at these things, because you don't know, and you don't know what you don't know. And so the link is there if anybody's really interested. A lot of these things are required by code, and some of them are just kind of best practices. But I just thought it was interesting, and I thought it was a quick picture and a good way to show everybody, like, when I say we don't just cut checks, I mean, we really don't just cut checks. We do a lot of other things, so.
And it really shows what it means when you say that public schools are the most heavily regulated industry in the state.
Yeah. Yeah, and on top of this doesn't include any of the audits or the surveys or the things that they send us periodically. We're just sort of selected to do something. So over the last year, I think Jennifer Banco and I have done maybe 3 different audits on particular federal programs, and it's just, we won't have to do that one for maybe 2 more years, but sometimes they all fall in the same year. And it's just periodic, and you don't necessarily know when those are coming, so those aren't on this list because they're just kind of when you're selected. So yeah, there's a lot of strange reporting requirements sometimes. Sometimes they make total sense to me, and then other times I look at these things and I'm like, why are we doing this? But it is because of all these, because we are so heavily regulated.
Well, and the fact that they try to come up with reporting that fits every school in the district or in the state, and schools are so different that something that might be really necessary for one district may not make sense here, and vice versa.
I did kind of glance down through this, and I pulled out some of the items that don't really apply to us. So the actual report, or the actual grid that we all have access to is longer. I pulled some things that out that just make no sense, because I didn't want somebody to look at that and think, why would you do that? Well, we don't. But yeah, there are almost 200 left that we still have to do.
When something new is required, from the federal or state level, how often does that mean that something is taken away?
Never. Never.
Okay.
To my knowledge.
Don't you love how,
in my experience, it has not. Yeah,
laws should be, it's
Yeah.
needed for a reason, and therefore something should be irrelevant afterwards.
Yeah, that has not been my experience.
My condolences.
So, not really a report, but I just thought it was interesting and kind of goes to show, answer those questions that we get sometimes. Okay, moving on to item 7.03. This is the engagement letter for Ray and Associates. Ray and Associates is the company that they actually do both our conversion and our audit. So we get a lot of efficiencies by using them for both. It's not required to do that, but they're very good at doing both, so we've used them in the past. This engagement letter, if you're looking at just the dollars, you're gonna look at it and think, oh my gosh, it's a 10% increase every year. I pulled up the history of what we have paid to them for this service. So on this contract, we're looking at preparing the reports for fiscal 24, 25, and 26, and the amounts of 15.5, 17.050, and 18.755. So those are 10% increase from 24 to 25 and 25 to 26. What's interesting though is in 19, we were paying $20,000 for the service. So we're still below that. And part of that is just because when you do have a team that has been doing this project for so long and you have the same people, we get a lot of efficiencies just by them knowing us and knowing our process. They know exactly what to ask for. We know exactly what they're asking for and we can have it ready ahead of time. So we get a lot of efficiencies there. But, you know, part of it is just they've done a good job of being, you know, efficient and working hard to get it done fast. They get it done on time for us. So we have discretion as to who we hire for this part of it. The audit side, we don't have complete discretion over. The auditor of state actually dictates to us. There's a process that we'll go through at a later date, but this we do have discretion over, and Ray has done a great job for us. So I'm very happy with that contract. Item 7.04 is equipment disposal. There's a list attached there. There are a lot of things on there, a few buses that at a future board meeting you will be approving, hopefully. We will be presenting to you a contract for an auction for some buses and some radio equipment and some things like that. So this is approving that we can dispose of them, and then at a later board meeting we will actually look at a contract to do that through auction. Item 7.05 is donations. First item is the money from a high school basketball team fundraiser organized by Andrew Bros for a shooting machine for basketball in the amount of $2,385. $200 for the regatta from Aqueduct. And then that list there is these are all vendors and organizations who have given gift cards to the middle school to use for Staff Appreciation Week. So we appreciate all of the people on that list, the Boosters, Fireside, Cowboy Restaurant, Golf Dome, Geraci's, Duct Tape Brand, Civics, Dairy Island, Cleveland Guardians, Geiger's, the PTO, Guaranteed Rate, Hello LLC, and Erica Medina. So we appreciate all of those donations. That's all I have for you. I'm recommending your approval.
Great. Any questions? Ashley, please take the roll.
Dr. Sabo?
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper?
Yes.
Mrs. Bendel?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Do we have anybody signed up for public participation for a non-agenda item? Okay. Lauren, you want to make a motion for
I
executive session?
would love to make a motion to enter into executive session in accordance with Ohio Revised Code 121.22 for the sole purpose of the consideration of the following matters: to consider one or more as applicable of the checkmarked items with respect to a public employee or official. Tonight we have employment and compensation of a public employee or official.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Ashley, please take the roll.
Mrs. Bendel?
Yes.
Mrs. Hoy?
Yes.
Mrs. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Sabo?
Yes.
Dr. Schlepper?
Yes.
Okay, our next meeting is May 29th. It's a regular meeting. It will be at 7 o'clock in the Sands Community Room, and we might take action after executive session. Thank you.